G'day guys, in this part of the BT-50 build we're going to add some things for reliability, engine reliability. That is a fuel filter and a catch can. So I've bought a kit from Direction Plus. It comes with a Provent 200. There are smaller Provents like 100 and 150, but you want the 200 because it allows the maximum amount of flow. So the bigger the engine, basically, the larger the Provent that you might require. So both items today, fuel filter and catch can, are grouped together here because they come as a kit, they go in the same bracket. Both are filters, one being oil, capturing oil from air through the crankcase bypass. It's going to try and remove the oil from that recirculation and give you a drain to drain it out, basically stopping the oil going into your intake manifold. The other one is for fuel or diesel, and the idea behind it is that it is mostly a water trap. Now Direction Plus offer a few different items. You've got the Fuel Manager and the Preline. The kit I've gone with is the Fuel Manager 30, so it's a 30 micron fuel filter, and you use this as a pre-fuel filter. So according to Direction Plus, the Fuel Manager 30 is basically exclusively a water trap. It's less so for contaminants. The Preline, if you decide to go down that route, is for contaminants, and it's also more efficient at capturing water. So the Fuel Manager 30 is a great filter. It's been on the market for a long time. It's about 95 to 98% effective at separating water through your diesel. It comes with a sight glass on the bottom for you to be able to see how much water you have and then drain it. The alternative option here is to go with the Preline. So the Preline comes with a bit more to it. It's got an extra layer for contaminants as well as the water separation, and it also has a sensor at the bottom which will sense when there is water being trapped above a certain level, and then you know that you have water in the diesel and to drain it. So this is more effective as a pre-filter because you don't have to wait for the factory filter to set off its water alarm. The advantage of having the Preline warning would be that you are warned about water in the system before it gets to your factory fuel filter, so you can shut your car off and fix the problem. So just quickly on additional fuel filters, you can have a pre-fuel filter, so you intercept the fuel line before it gets to the factory fuel filter, or you can have a post-fuel filter, which, as stated, comes after the factory fuel filter. So the pre-filter is about 30 microns. It'll get rid of a few of the larger contaminants, and it will separate the water before it gets to the factory fuel filter. The theory being that it allows the factory fuel filter to last longer and work more effectively. On the flip side, you could have a post filter. You go as low as 5 microns. And the advantage of this is that once your factory fuel filter sets off an alarm for your check engine saying that there's water in the fuel, you still have the post filter filtering out that amount, so you have time to pull over and switch the car off and fix the issue. Now with this factory Fuel Manager 30, it's kind of the entry level one. It's kind of like the basic one. Then from there you can upgrade to the Preline as a pre-fuel filter with the added benefit of the warning system. So as far as I can tell, the brackets are exactly the same. So I can easily change this 30 micron fuel filter for a 5 micron fuel filter down the track. And then obviously you just have to change your fuel hoses around. So instead of intercepting the tank to the factory fuel filter, you want it to go through the factory fuel filter and then intercept it before it goes to the engine on the outlet of the factory fuel filter. There's a chance I'll upgrade to the Preline in the future. It takes the same bracket again, so I just need to change the filter over and run some wiring so I get that pre-warning before water gets to the factory fuel filter. So originally I was only looking at getting a pre-fuel filter. I wasn't too worried about getting a catch can, but a lot of them come in kits where they share the same bracket, and I thought if I'm going to get a catch can later down the track, it would be more annoying trying to source a bracket that works with the existing pre-fuel filter. I bought a kit from PPD. It's a Direction Plus kit. Now the bracket work is designed for both of them, so it's nice and easy. It uses existing holes and it will share some bolts with the ABS unit and the fuel filter. So the catch can and the fuel filter are both filters really, so you're just putting them in line of an existing system and then extending hoses to have an in and an out back into the existing system. So pretty simple job, not too much to it. So we'll have a look around the engine bay. Once you watch this, it might make a bit more sense to you. So costs for this kit, they could have changed since I bought it. I bought it probably 6 months ago now, but it's $588 at the time. So we've got the Provent oil separator kit from Direction Plus. So 3.63 kilos is how much we're going to add to the car, less whatever we weigh at the end of the job. Provent or separator kit comes with the Provent 200 and a 30 micron fuel filter. Scan the QR code for instructions, and in here we've got the brackets, the pre-fuel filter, catch can, all the required hose work, and some nuts, bolts, washers, elbows, and any other attachments that we need for the job. So to start the job, we'll be fitting the catch can. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to do is mount the Provent. So we're going to remove this engine cover, we're going to jump on the other side and remove an inlet hose, change the elbow angle to the back, and then we'll start mounting our brackets. So guys, we've jumped over to the driver's side, engine cover is off, just need your dipstick here. This hose here is the crankcase bypass hose. We're going to be removing this from here, and then that elbow that it attaches to, we're going to point out towards the back, towards the firewall, and that is because later there will be a hose running along the back that will connect into here. For a pain, they're spring loaded. I used bullnose pliers to pinch it, and then I worked it up, further up, so it's not clamping down, and then I was able to pull that hose off. Now this in here, we're just rotating to the back. So this is the factory fuel filter. Down here, you'll be able to see this little nut here is for an M6 bolt. So it should be a 10mm socket to get it off, or spanner. We're going to take this off, and then the bracket will go from here out into this void. There'll be a bolt that goes in here. There'll be a bolt over to the ABS unit. Okay guys, in your pack you'll have bolts. There's only one M6 bolt in there, and you've got a flat and a spring to go with it. That will go on the bottom of the bracket. There's an existing threaded hole in the chassis. The nut that we just removed on the existing fuel filter bracket will go over the top of this, and that will hold it in place. This one here at the end will be an M8 bolt, which is also supplied, and that will attach this bracket to a brace. The brace being this bit here, and then the last mounting point will come across to the ABS unit. Okay, so this is the fuse box. You've got these little tabs, there's 4 of them. You can lift the front 2, or you can lift all 4 of them if you want, and you can sort of lift the fuse box, and you'll actually be able to get your hand down there to grab this nut. Otherwise, you don't have a lot of room. So you can partially lift the fuse box. It doesn't have to go very far. That will allow you to grab this nut out. Okay, so there's your bracket mount, 2 6mm. This supporting bracket goes in here. So that M8 bolt there that holds the ABS unit stand, we'll use that to bolt there, and then we'll bolt this up with a supplied M8 bolt, 2 flats and a spring. The bracing bracket goes behind the main bracket. We've tightened all of them up. Now we're going to mount the catch can. Before we do, because we've got the fuel filter to go in, we're just going to put the bolts for the fuel filter through here, facing towards the engine, so the catch can doesn't get in the way afterwards. So before we put everything else in, to show you the bracket arrangement, we've got that bolt is existing for the fuel filter, so we use that. Those 2 M10s are just put in for the fuel filter, just because the catch can will get in the way later. We've got an M8 at the end there, flat either side, spring, nylock nut. Down here, this is the ABS unit here. So that's your basic bracket setup complete. Tighten everything up and mount the catch can. But before we do that, we're going to put the drain hose on the catch can. So I've just laid out the hose clamps, make sure we've got everything, all the bits of hose. Now what we're looking for the drain is the 12mm. So we push that on as far as we can, and I'm just going to slide a hose clamp up, put another one on here, which will be the tap. So that secures that in place. Now we've got a drain tap to put in here. So this is how the drain closes, blocking the line, and then if you were to open it, it will allow any oil to drip through there. Alright, once you push that in, just remember that you want to close the tap and then push your hose clamp up as well. So we've got the Provent 200 here. It comes in a little bracket, 2 M8 holes. We've got our drain hose connected. This is the 12mm drain hose. We've got a tap in there, taps in the closed position. So we're going to feed this down, and we're going to tie this out of the way later. We're going to tie it up somewhere where it's not going to get burnt or rub through anyway. When we put the Provent in, we want these to face a certain direction. If you need to twist it around, lift this pin out here. You can squeeze this to make it easier. So with that released, you can spin this around and you can see it locks into place at 1/16 of a turn maybe. When you find the direction you want, clip that back in and you'll lock it in that direction. For now, I'll just try and feed it down somewhere. The direction we want our lines to face is towards this concave of the fuel filter bracket, because we're going to be attaching an elbow, so it'll go this way, attach the elbow, and it will shoot off that way. So just quickly on the orientation of the Provent. Now it has to be perfect, because if I spun that anti-clockwise one click, it wouldn't mount, because this part would be hitting this part, and if I spun it one click clockwise, it wouldn't mount. As you can see, there's already contact here, so this is only just fitting where it is. If they can't just add another 10mm there, there's no reason why they can't, just to get that off there, because all the vibration, that is not going to do it any good. So we'll see how it goes, but that is a fault of the bracket, just by 5 or 10mm. Now in your pack you've got two 25 to 19 reducers. We'll put them on here and here. Then we'll have a 19mm 90-degree elbow on here. Two 25mm clamps holding that, and then we'll have our hoses coming from the reducer and going across the other side of the engine. Okay, so now we have two 25 to 19 reducers, two 25 clamps. We put an elbow in the 19mm side with a 19mm clamp. And then from here we connect two 750mm long 3/4 inch hoses. We'll go from here to the other end, and we'll jump across the other end and do those connections. Alright guys, so here's that arrangement with the reducers on, the clamps on, and the elbows on. So we're just going to make up these two bits of hose on the floor here, and they will run across. One will join in the hose we disconnected, the other will join that elbow that we bent towards the firewall. So according to the instructions, these are supposed to both be 750mm. This one is 700, this one is 750, so hopefully this 700mm one is long enough, otherwise this is all a waste of time. They can't even cut the hoses to length. Okay guys, so we've made up two fittings, one with an elbow, the other with an elbow, and this little extension of the 19mm hose. This one here, I've got the clip on ready for the other end. This will go to the engine. This will connect to the hose that we disconnected. This will be the lower vent of the Provent 200 going to the hose we disconnected, and on the upper outlet of the Provent 200 we have this going to the elbow that we bent towards the firewall. So upper one has the extension, goes on the elbow. Lower one of the Provent 200 has an elbow, connects to the disconnected hose. And these obviously are for this end, that goes on the Provent. Here is the finished product of the Provent 200. So this top hose goes across to the engine. The bottom hose goes across and joins the hose that we disconnected from the engine before. So here's the hose we disconnected before. Put it back together, put this back in here, push them down so the engine cover will go back on. This is an existing clamp that was on this before, so we've used that to connect to a new hose, and that one is going to the bottom. This elbow that was already in the engine that we pointed to the firewall is now connected to the other hose, which goes to the top on the Provent 200. Alright guys, we've got the fuel filter here. On the bottom we've got a sight glass with a drain plug. So this is a water trap down here, and then you can drain it by loosening this, which will be hard to access once it's installed, but it's there. And you just want to do that up pretty firm, just so it's not going to leak. So we've got the 2M10 bolts, we've already put them in the bracket, and that will be facing this way in the engine bay. So these two ports on the back, we're going to put bungs in here and block it, and these two will have connections for the fuel lines. So you got some M16 washers that'll go on here, and you have two bungs as well to go over the top. And then we'll just nip these up. You don't have to crank them as hard as you can. They look like a 17. So the two bungs are 17mm. The two at the front of the car go towards the factory fuel filter. We're going to put these adapters in. So we've got these two remaining M16 washers, and we'll just put these adapters in. Now for these two, if you want to do them up now, you can with a socket before anything's connected. It is 22mm. Now we'll mount it in the engine bay with the M10s. Alright guys, now we're going to try to fit this in past this catch can. It's going to be a bit of a pain. Disconnected this elbow here just to try and get the fuel filter in. Leave this off until I've done the fuel lines, and then I'll reconnect that at the end. So for the fuel filter, we're going to disconnect the lower red clip, which is from the tank, and we're going to remove this hose. So we might have to take these other ones off just to get access to it, but you just need to lift these clips up and then pull these hoses off. So we've disconnected the lower red clip. And you can see down there, there's more red clips. We want to trace the line out that we've just disconnected and disconnect the other end as well. Just removed the red clip on the other end of the hose that goes to the fuel tank. Now I've moved the drain pan underneath because there will be some diesel come out. There is a little bit of diesel comes out even when you disconnect the top. To get this clip off down lower, I just had some pliers that I reached in and grabbed and bent it out. It's a bit of a pain to get down there. So we'll be removing this hose. So this is the factory hose we'll be replacing. From the tank, it'll come through the filter, out of the filter into the factory fuel filter. Keep this hose in case you want to change the arrangement later. If you want to get rid of the pre-fuel filter, you might want to change it to a final filter or a post filter. Keep this hose handy because you can reuse it. At this stage of the job, we only have this one length of 9.5mm fuel hose. This is for the in and out of the fuel filter. We're just going to cut it. We'll lubricate this end with WD-40 and we will fit one of our 90-degree bends. This will go onto the adapter that we fitted before. That'll screw on. So we're going to spray in here, push this right up until it butts up, and then we're going to put this in and cut it to length. On the other end where we cut it will be this quick disconnect attachment. And then for the other half, it'll be the same again. We'll have a 90-degree bend into the outlet of the pre-fuel filter and then a quick connect into the factory fuel filter. So from the fuel filter, the hose will come down like this. Now if you imagine the line from the tank coming this way, we're connecting a right angle join in there. The line from the tank stops. This goes from the fuel filter down, right angle connection. Just hold this in the engine bay where you think you'll need to cut it and then make the cut, and the other end we'll use for the outlet of the pre-filter to the inlet of the factory fuel filter. I'm just going to double check this before I cut. Now we want to fit a hose clamp on, push this connector in, and then we'll do that hose clamp up. So that's the orientation we want there. Now the remaining bit of hose, we've got 2 fittings left. You don't have to use all the hose. I'm going to try use it all if I can get a nice bend on it. But if you're using too much and it starts to pinch in places, then definitely cut it back. So like before, we've got to lubricate this end here. Going to push our barbed fitting in until the 2 faces meet. This end screws onto the adapter of the outlet of the pre-fuel filter. This end will connect to the factory fuel filter. I'll just make sure the lengths are right and there's not going to be any kinks. If I have to, I'll cut it, put this in with this clamp on as well. So just note that I've removed the Provent hoses to get a better look and also to help me disconnect the other side of this factory fuel filter line that we disconnected before, because otherwise it's quite cluttered. On the fuel filter, the pre-fuel filter, this one here is the inlet, this one here is the outlet. So we've intercepted the line from the tank, goes into the inlet, through the filter, and then the outlet we will have going to this connection on the factory fuel filter. So if you can see here, I've angled this down, it comes across here. It's up against these lines here. These are breathers for diff, transfer, transmission, etc. So I'm going to cable tie it off to that to hold it steady. And then further down there, it connects with a right angle quick disconnect fitting. So it might be hard to see at the moment, but that is connected now. You'll hear it click when you push it on. You can do it shorter than what I've done it, but I'm going to start like this. And then if I need to cut it down later, I can always cut it down later. That's all back together now. Just to show you before I reconnect the Provent 200 lines, the one that we've just connected there is connecting to the outlet. Now I managed to keep all of that length on there. It's a nice smooth bend down and up, and that allows me to change it if these get in the way somehow, and I can always chop it down later. This one here as well, I could probably chop about 100mm off that, but it gives me a bit of wiggle room to move around and keep it away from obstacles and sharp edges. Also, just be careful which way this is facing. I've just twisted it so there's no sharp edges on this factory line. This hose clamp here. So that new line is hard to see. I'll just point it out there. So now I'm just going to nip all this up with a spanner, cable tie it off, and that's the end of the engine bay part after I reconnect these 2 lines here. So here's the finished product, Provent 200. Hoses running up across the back of the engine bay. Hopefully this goes back on. One of these hoses was shorter than it's supposed to be. The fuel filter, Provent 200 hoses angle up above the fuel filter. Fuel filter sits below. I've tightened all the lines, hose clamps, everything's back as it was. The fuel filter does have a sight glass, but it's basically impossible to see it. You'd almost have to remove the whole filter housing just to look at the sight glass. It's a bit of a pain in the ass. And the Provent contacting here hopefully doesn't wear through with lots of vibration. It can't be twisted any further anti-clockwise because it hits the ABS unit. So this is the only position it can go. I feel like they can redesign this bracket, add 10mm here, it'll be a much better design. It'd be nice if they could measure their hoses properly as well. Okay, just quickly I'll show you where I ran the drain down to. Now, because where the Provent sits is basically behind the axle, I've decided just to run it out into the wheel arch here, but I didn't want it to get damaged by anything. I've left all the length on it. I've looked around for somewhere to tie it to, and I've actually tied it 3 times here. It's tied to this cable loom, tied to itself to maintain pressure, forcing it away from the wheels, and tied to the back of the brake line bracket, not to the brake line itself. And then it is protected in here, which is a bracket for the bump stop. This bracket has a void for the bump stop. These are all welded edges, there's no moving parts, there's nothing on the inside. This is just a rubber stop, so it sits in there, it's protected, it's not going to get banged up. You can cut it to length, but I like having all the length on it. To remove it, I only need to remove either this tie and pull it out, or I can cut this tie and just pull this length out. Either or will do the same thing. I can drain it, just have to remove the front left wheel, which is not too hard to do. I could actually access it by going full lock to the right, and then I should be able to reach in here. So for the last step, we just turn the car to the accessories position, let the fuel filter be primed. We do this about 4 to 6 times according to the instructions. Leave it in this key position for about 30 to 45 seconds. And after that, we'll start the car, let it run for a bit, take a look at the system, the fuel lines, see if there's any leaks, and hopefully it's all good to go. Now to check your water, you can't really see the sight glass the way it's mounted in the Ford Ranger and BT-50s. So you'd have to undo the 2 fuel lines, the inlet and outlet port, and then remove the filter from the engine bay to view it. And if you're going through that much hassle, you're going to drain it anyway, regardless of how much is in there. In the box here, I've got everything that didn't get installed on the car. So the difference with this weight here and what we weighed before is what's currently installed on the car. We've also removed this factory fuel line, which we will be keeping. That's how much the factory fuel line weighs. Alright guys, that's it with the fuel filter and catch can. The car started, seems to be running fine. Overall, glad I've got them installed, but at the same time, I feel like the bracket could be better, and the hose being the wrong length was a bit annoying because I could have had a bit more slack towards the back of the engine there. Very common kit, a lot of people have it. I think this will do me for a long time, but eventually I might change to a post filter, or I'll more than likely upgrade to the preline at some point, just so I've got double alarm system for any water in the diesel. It is also supposedly better contaminant remover. Do I recommend it to other people? So I don't think this is a completely necessary upgrade. Personally, I think the fuel filter is worth a bit more than the catch can, but a lot of them come in kits and they're on the same bracket, so it doesn't hurt to get both. It might be a good idea to clean the intake manifold after installing a catch can, and then you might be able to see the difference after 100,000 Ks. You should be able to see how effective the catch can has been. It's also a good idea to change the factory fuel filter at the same time that you install the pre-fuel filter. This way you can just change both out at the same time every 40,000 kilometers or thereabouts. So overall, I'm happy that everything went together. I might make some minor alterations. I might cut one of the fuel lines a little bit shorter. I left a bit of length on it just so I could maneuver it around the catch can air hoses. Not entirely happy with the catch can mounting. I feel like the bracket's a little bit off, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe it's not going to rub, maybe it won't be an issue at all. But the first impressions don't look great because the engine typically has a lot of vibration. So a bit of cheap insurance as far as I'm concerned. The fuel filter was a must-have. The catch can, there's arguments both ways about whether it's actually helpful or not, but it definitely does remove oil from that EGR system. There are those that argue that the dry soot circulating through the system is just as damaging. So won't jump, we'll walk. So at this stage, so just hold that in there. I go with the hose for the things I was going to say. Out of warrant. What are you trying to say?